So, spoiler season for Dominaria United is finally here, and I did say that I'd get another cup of coffee on the last episode, and I forgot, but I'll do it after this one, because I definitely need another one. But regardless, if you haven't seen Children of the Apocalypse, make sure you check that one out, not just to hear me talk about coffee, but also to hear me talk about this brand new, disgustingly powerful Praetor. And the hits just keep coming, and on this episode, I actually mean the hits not only with, exciting new cards, but also a punch to the gut, because apparently Ajani is a Phyrexian. So what exactly happened to make this happen? Well, I don't know, because I'm not a lore mage, but there are plenty of fantastic lore mages out there, so I'm sure Magic Arcanum's gonna have an episode on it at some point. But yeah, let's talk about the card on this episode. Now, I'm not sure if you read Phyrexian, but I definitely don't, so luckily they included an actual version of this card that is non-Phyrexian, so let's go into that one. Regardless, it is quite jarring to see Ajani as a Phyrexian, Phyrexian text or not, just like Tamiyo now, this is the second Planeswalker that is a Phyrexian, and with this one being a sleeper agent, there very well might be some other sleeper agent Phyrexian Planeswalkers, so that's scary. Anyways, this Ajani Planeswalker starts off at 4 starting loyalty and costs 1 green Phyrexian Selesnya, which is a weird phrase, and white. And with that Phyrexian Selesnya, it has completed, which I believe this is on the Tamiyo Planeswalker as well. Basically, you can pay it with either green, white, or 2 life. If life was paid for it, this Planeswalker is going to enter with 2 fewer loyalty counters on it. So this can either be a 3-drop or a 4-drop depending on the situation that you're in and what you want to do with this Planeswalker. Regardless, the +1 is really top card of your library. If it's a creature or Planeswalker card, put it into your hand. Otherwise, you may put it on the bottom of your library. Its -3 is distribute 3+1 counters among up to 3 target creatures. They gain vigilance until end of turn. Now, both of those abilities seem pretty Ajani, and then there's the last one, the ultimate, which is -6. You get an emblem with whenever you cast a creature or Planeswalker spell, target opponent gets 2 poison counters. So, yeah. Not very Ajani as we've known Ajani previously, but now Phyrexian Ajani apparently just all about poison counters. So, lovely, but yeah, that is an incredibly potent ultimate, and one that might not be all that hard to get to, because again, if you just pay the 4 mana for this Planeswalker instead of, completing it, you start with 4, you need to get to -6. That takes, what? 2 turns, and of course there are plenty of ways to make that happen a lot quicker. And while you are doing that, obviously, you get the top card of your library potentially into your hand if it's a creature Planeswalker to help you, with that -6. Once you do get to that ultimate, take players out with those creatures and Planeswalkers in your hand. Now, obviously, that mill ability is pretty solid as well, but, the prospect of taking out your opponents with poison counters is probably going to be, well, quite appealing to many players out there that want to do that sort of thing. And of course, there is a certain mechanic that works very well with both +1/+1 counters and poison counters and any kinds of counters, and we'll get to that here in a bit. But yeah, on to this quick take, I'm going to take you through different cards that work very well with this Planeswalker, and then also commanders out there that might want this Planeswalker in their deck. And as a reminder, if you're interested in any of the cards on this episode, if you're building a deck that might want to utilize this Planeswalker and utilize other cards that I'm talking about, make sure you check out the link in the description below. Now with all that said, let's jump into it. Now, actually, really quick, the first card that came to mind when I saw this brand new Planeswalker is actually Hand of the Praetors, which is not a Planeswalker. It is a, I believe, Phyrexian zombie that's probably been, errated at this point. Regardless, it says, whenever you cast a creature spell with Infect, target player gets a poison counter. Now, in an Infect deck specifically, obviously, this is a very powerful card. On top of it also, having Infect and also being an anthem for your Infect creatures, being able to just dish out poison counters whenever you just, cast creature spells, that's a very powerful thing. And of course, Ajani's ultimate takes that to another level even, saying, okay, yeah, now you can cast either, Planeswalkers or creatures. They don't have to have Infect, and that player is going to get 2 poison counters. So just casting 5 creatures or 5 Planeswalkers or whatever combination is enough to take someone out. And of course, there are ways to go even quicker with that. Speaking of quicker, let's talk about some incredibly expensive cards that can make things go very quick with this Planeswalker and basically any other Planeswalker. Let's talk about Doubling Season and Vorinclex Monstrous Raider. Doubling Season is a gross card and a grossly expensive card for a reason. It's an enchantment that says if an effect would create one or more tokens under your control, it creates twice the many of those tokens instead. That part doesn't matter for Ajani. What does matter is if an effect would put one or more counters on a permanent you control, it puts twice that many of those counters on that permanent instead. So basically, Ajani comes into play, and instead of having 4 loyalty counters, again assuming you're not completing, 4 loyalty counters, you get 8, which means that you can ultimate right away. Now, obviously, Doubling Season, is pretty much the card that you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this Planeswalker, Ultimate Doubling Season, but this is definitely, one of those game-ending ultimates that just like, okay, good luck from now on because you are in big trouble since I have this emblem, which you cannot deal with in any way. And you're actually in even more trouble, though, if Vorinclex has anything to say about it. Because, of course, Vorinclex is a gross praetor, now apparently, best friends with Ajani because you just joined the Phyrexian team, Ajani. Sorry about that. If you would put one or more counters on a permanent or player, put twice that many of each of those kinds of counters on that permanent or player instead. And like all the praetors, essentially, this basically does the exact opposite for your opponents. It essentially halves those counters. Regardless, the part that matters is that first part because you get Ajani into play, you double the counters, then you ultimate right away again. And now, whenever you cast a creature or Planeswalker, you are getting 4 poison counters on an opponent. So yeah, Ajani and Vorinclex are definitely best buds. And I'm really happy that Vorinclex just happens to be a mono-green commander, and Ajani is Selesnya. So unfortunately, but very fortunately, Ajani cannot fit into a Vorinclex deck. Now, that being said, obviously, there are going to be decks that are utilizing both, so look out for that. And actually, 2 more commanders that can't utilize this new Ajani, but work well in decks that utilize them as well, are cards like Pure Magic Rascal and Karth the Lion. Now, Pure is partnered with Toothy, which is a blue commander, so obviously that is Simic and not Selesnya. Regardless, it says if one or more counters would be put on a permanent your team controls, that many plus 1 of each of those kinds of counters are put on that permanent instead. So, and I probably should have mentioned this in those previous cards as well, but yeah, now, okay, again, Ajani comes into play. Cool, you get an extra counter on Ajani to start at 5. Then let's say you plus 1 Ajani, that's basically now a plus 2, getting to 7, so it just takes 1 more trip around the table, as long as you can protect Ajani, to ultimate, and you get to keep Ajani around after that. And speaking of which, there's also a ton of synergy with Karth the Lion, which of course he's playing a lot of Planeswalker decks, and we'll get to those here in a bit, but yeah, Karth says, when it enters the battlefield or a Planeswalker you control dies, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may reveal a Planeswalker card from among them, put in your hand. Put the rest of your library in a random order. On top of that, Planeswalker's loyalty abilities you activate cost an additional +1 to activate. So first up, Karth is like, hey, let's help get you some more Planeswalkers. Whenever Planeswalkers die, or when I enter the battlefield, I get you more. So cool. Let's get to that ultimate for Ajani, and then let's just start playing Planeswalker after Planeswalker after Planeswalker to poison your opponents to death. That's kind of a weird phrase. Poison them to death? Yeah, that works, right? Take them out with poison. There we go. But of course, that next part helps out even more, really, because now, again, with that additional +1, that's kind of a weird way to phrase this, but basically, Ajani's +1 becomes a +2 now, and then the -6 becomes a -5, so it helps you get to your ultimate quicker as well. And, again, allows you to keep Ajani around. So, again, good thing Ajani cannot fit in Karth decks, but obviously there are plenty of decks that are going to be running Karth and Pier and Doubling Season and Vorinclex that are going to want Ajani as well. This is getting really scary. But let's make things even scarier, because those decks are probably also running the Chain Veil and Oath of Teferi. The Chain Veil says at the beginning of your end step, if you didn't activate a loyalty ability of a Planeswalker this turn, you lose 2 life. If you're playing a Planeswalker deck, you are probably going to be activating those, so no life lost. But also, pay for tap. Essentially, you can activate your Planeswalker's loyalty abilities again, as if they didn't activate any of them earlier. So, yeah, plus Ajani multiple times, and then next trip around the table, yep, there's the ultimate. Speaking of which, Oath of Teferi says, whenever it enters the battlefield, exile another target permanent you control, return to the battlefield under source control at the beginning of the next end step, so you can blink a Planeswalker. Great! If you want to get their loyalty back to where it needs to be. Also, you may activate loyalty abilities of Planeswalkers you control twice each turn rather than once. So, kind of like another Chain Veil, and yeah, if you're playing against Super Friends decks, Planeswalker decks, they're probably going to have these, and you're probably going to be in big trouble if you see Ajani, especially if both of these are already out. Speaking of being in trouble, though, those decks are also going to already want to run a ton of Proliferate effects, which are incredible with Ajani. So let's talk about cards like Great Proliferation, Evolution Sage, and Execrable Tide. Great Proliferation has, when it deals combination to a player or planeswalker, Proliferate. So you choose any number of permanents and or players and give each another counter already there. And yeah, since it's a flyer, it can pretty easily get through, and yeah, again, proliferating is incredible with planeswalkers because first up, you're just like, oh, okay, yeah, these have loyalty counters on them, and I like to get more of them, and this helps me get more of them. So instead of having to keep activating Ajani again and again and again, you're like, okay, I'll activate Ajani, cool, I'll get a counter, awesome, I'll just, hit with this, okay, cool, I get another counter, awesome. And then once you get that ultimate going, and you get at least one poison counter on your opponents, which, obviously it'd be two essentially with Ajani, but you know what I mean. Now, when you proliferate, you can also, keep getting counters on your planeswalkers, but on top of that, you can get more poison counters on your opponents too. So that's going to make for a much quicker clock, especially in combination with something like an Evolution Sage, which can proliferate even faster. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, proliferate. And yeah, since you obviously have access to green, you've got plenty of ways to get a ton of lands into play, so have fun taking your opponents out very quickly, and yeah, getting to that ultimate incredibly quickly. Another card that is actually kind of like Ajani, and another card that I actually thought about essentially right when I saw this new Planeswalker is an Execrable Tide. It says whenever you cast a spell, proliferate. This works incredibly well with Ajani. First up, again, it can help you get to that ultimate very quickly. Secondly, when you're casting your spells now, you're essentially getting 3 poison counters on your opponents. Again, assuming that they are planeswalker and creature spells, but you know what I mean. Now, it makes it even quicker. So yeah, Ajani can be an incredible win condition for the right deck. And the first commander that came to my mind that probably wants to use Ajani, okay, never mind, wants to use Ajani, definitely wants to use Ajani, Atraxa, Praetor's Voice. Atraxa can be an incredibly gross commander. Okay, obviously, 4/4 Flying Vigilance, Death Touch, Lifelink. If that wasn't enough, on top of that, and most importantly, at the beginning of your end step, proliferate. So Atraxa is incredible with any kind of counters, and yeah, sure, +1/+1 counters, awesome. Actually, this does, work with Johnny's -3. And I don't know why I just called it Johnny, but I did. So let's just keep going. Anyways, Johnny's -3 gets those counters on your creatures, and which is great because then you can make your creatures even bigger. And obviously, while you're doing that, you can also get more counters on Ajani with proliferating. But of course, more importantly, once you start getting poison counters on your opponents, they're going to be in big trouble because you're obviously going to have a lot of proliferate effects in a deck like this. And yeah, yes, there are Atraxa decks out there that are +1/+1 counters, but of course there are also a ton of Super Friends decks out there, Planeswalker decks around Atraxa, and this can be an incredible finisher for them. Next up, another fantastic Super Friends commander, another great Planeswalker commander is the Prismatic Bridge, and I'm not even saying Eska, it's the backside, okay, Prismatic Bridge, all right, that is probably the side that you're going to be seeing if you're playing against this commander. Anyways, at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards in the top of your library to reveal a creature or planeswalker card. Put that card on the battlefield and the rest of the bottom of your library in a random order. In a Super Friends deck, this is basically get a free planeswalker out every turn. So yeah, there's some really powerful things that you can do with this. Especially in combination with, things like Vorinclex. Okay, you might even have, a couple creatures in that deck that can really help too. Yeah, you go, oh, I hit Vorinclex, cool, next turn. Oh, I hit Ajani. Okay, you all are very dead. So yeah, I can see Prismatic Bridge Super Friends decks being very excited about this card as well. And speaking of 5-color Super Friends commanders, let's talk about Sisay, Weatherlight Captain. Sisay is going to get +1/+1 for each color among other legendary permanents you control. So yeah, even with just Ajani on the field, that's what, an additional +2/+2, but with this commander, you can also just pay Wooburg, search your library for a legendary permanent card with converted mana cost less than Sisay's power, put that card on the battlefield, and shuffle your library. So now you can tutor out legendary permanents, which obviously includes the new Ajani and also Vorinclex. So go get your Vorinclex, go get your Ajani, say goodbye, to your opponents. Even a newer Super Friends commander might want to utilize this as well with Lae'zel? Vlaakith's Champion? My apologies, I butchered that terribly. This is a quick take. I'm just going to keep moving forward. Lae'zel. There, let's go with that. 3/3 Gith Warrior says if you would put one or more counters on a creature or planeswalker you control or on yourself, put that many plus one of each of those kinds of counters on the permanent player instead. And choose a background. So yeah, this obviously can be a Selesnya commander if you choose a background that utilizes green. So yeah, this is another way to get more and more counters on your planeswalkers more quickly. And of course, it does specify put a counter on yourself. So no, this will not get you extra poison counters on your opponents, but I'm sure you've got plenty of proliferate effects to do just that. Moving on, how about a +1/+1 counter commander? I mean, those can obviously utilize Ajani as well. Again, that -3 is pretty spicy with a commander like this, because this commander is going to cost 1 less to cast for each creature you control a +1 counter on it, and creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each creature you control a +1 counter on it. So with just one activation from Ajani, and assuming you've got 3 creatures in play, this is going to cost less, and your creatures cost 3 less too. And of course, with your creatures costing less, if you are able to get Ajani up to, that alt level, you ult, and then, yeah, you're going to be casting a lot of creatures very quickly, so you can take your opponents out very quickly with that emblem. And obviously, in +1 counter builds like this one, you're going to be utilizing proliferate effects as well, so have fun poisoning your opponents out of the game. Now, one more commander that I did want to mention, just because it popped in my mind, or at least some creatures that work really well that popped in my mind. Let's talk about Tulane Teller of Tales, which the creatures that I'm talking about that work very well with this, and with Ajani are Shrieking Drake and White Mane Lion, creatures like that essentially can bounce back to your hand that you can keep recasting again and again and again. Now, am I saying that all Tulane decks out there are going to want Ajani? No, absolutely not. But just keep in mind, Ajani can work well, obviously, with creatures that do bounce, or, if you've got ways to get creatures back to your hand or planeswalkers back to your hand to recast, obviously, that can work very well with this new Ajani with its ult. But perhaps the biggest news out of this Ajani being revealed is that, there might be more and more Phyrexian planeswalkers coming out in the very near future. Because, if Ajani is a completed Phyrexian, first there's Tamiyo, and essentially anyone's on the chopping block now, I guess. So, although actually I do want to point out that mono white commanders, or commanders I should say, that are traditionally in mono white are just getting left and right taken out. Okay, Elspeth was killed back in Theros. Yes, Elspeth's back. Okay, I got that. Cool. All right, but still killed. Gideon is gone, and now Ajani is a Phyrexian. So yeah, Wizards. Apparently it's like, all right, you want some card advantage and some ways to ramp in mono white. Sure, we'll give you those, but we're taking your planeswalkers away from you. And that's just the way that I'm seeing it. But anyways. But yeah, now this episode is coming to a close. Yeah, I definitely did not expect to see this one. I did not expect Ajani to be a sleeper agent. That is pretty brutal. Not exactly sure, again, when or how this happened, but I'm sure, some of the stories will be saying that. Regardless, a very powerful planeswalker, one that is going to be a great finisher in a lot of Super Friends decks out there. And yeah, just look out. If this comes into play, it needs to be taken out quickly. Because once that emblem comes out, it might be too late for you. So yeah, again, if you are interested in this card and maybe you've got some decks that you're thinking about, utilizing it with, and, you're interested in some of the cards I talked about on this episode that might work well with it, make sure you check out that link in the description below. And of course, make sure you stay tuned to this channel for even more exciting spoilers, even more exciting quick takes, and apparently news about who is becoming a Phyrexian or who is already a Phyrexian and whatnot. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.